Hi, and thank you for joining us for this episode of The State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. That is Robert Hilliard, or at least one of those is Robert Hilliard. I am Whitney Wiley, and I will introduce you to our guest in just a second. If you are here watching this live, this is The State of Leadership. As I mentioned, it's Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. If you're watching it on replay, we want to thank you for joining us there as well. So, Robert, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited because we have a friend of mine and a mentor. I'll tell you more about that later with us today. So I'm really excited.
Awesome. So we do want to introduce you to our guest. He is Alan Cohen. He's an author, public speaker, executive coach, and trainer for organizations and individuals seeking to maximize potential and drive peak performance in their lives, organizations, and careers. And those are our favorite kind of people here at the State of Leadership. We love people who are helping others and helping you to become the best version of yourself so that you can lead not only yourself, but you can lead others. And so Alan leverages his background in marketing, communications, human resources, and training and development to help leaders improve executive presence and develop greater emotional intelligence. And so we're going to be talking today about empathy, emotional intelligence, and how you can leverage those skills to improve yourself and improve your team. So, Alan, thank you for being with us.
That's the longest I've ever had to be quiet. That was fun. I was practicing my listening. Who am I?
That's what we're all about here, right? That helping everybody in every moment, right? Every experience is a learning opportunity. So we're going to be talking about empathy, emotional intelligence. I know those are your specialties. But before we get started, what is empathy and how is it different from sympathy?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm asked that often. I think the differentiator is that when you're sympathizing with someone, in some ways you're making yourself sort of separate from that person, or in some ways maybe even a little bit higher up. That there's something wrong with that person. They need your sympathy. You're feeling bad for them. Whereas empathy is much more about connecting to that person's heart and the facts of what they're sharing and imagining what it might be like to walk in their shoes. So it's much more of a seeing someone, supporting someone without disempowering them.
I love that definition. We've talked about empathy here on a number of occasions, and I look at it the same way as you do. And when I'm training, always trying to get people to step into the shoes of someone, right? Because when we can be empathetic with them, all the sort of the what's happening in our country right now. The word I'm looking for. I've got a word.
Division?
Division, yes. The division that we are experiencing. A lot of that is because we're looking at people as others, right, rather than it's like taking the time and saying, well, what are they experiencing? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? And connecting on that basis.
Yeah, and I think what we know is that people often find it difficult to empathize because how they might have dealt in that situation or the thoughts that are driving that person's action are very different from how you might behave, or a value may not line up. But the truth is, like, you can drop into an empathetic exchange with someone, and then you can go back to your own beliefs and thoughts and biases, and and value system, you don't have to give anything up by exploring somebody else's reality.
I like
Even if
that.
it's just for a few minutes, you can go back to your crap.
It's like you can be who you are.
Yeah, right.
Going back to who you are.
Go back to your judgment, and that's there for you. That didn't go away.
Robert.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to keep this as focused as I can, Alan. You know, I'm chomping at the bit to talk about a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
So let's start at the very beginning. So tell us about your journey and what led to you doing the work that you do today.
Right. We really should start at high school, right? Because we just recently discovered that we went to the same high school. We knew Staten Island. We share in common. But so I'm born and bred in Staten Island, New York, and loved creating and being kind of the center of everything in my childhood and through high school, and went to college for English literature and theater. I just heard a comedian just talking about, like, riffing on what useful majors, theater and English. But it actually did serve me well. I went into communications and public relations for many, many years after college, probably 20 years. Was able to work on the Harry Potter book launch, which was one of the most important things I've ever done professionally. And even did a TEDx about it, which folks are welcome to check out, The Magical Power of Shared Purpose. And then did the PR thing for all that time, but took a little detour doing some human resources work for a company where I had tenure. They paid for my MBA, and really got turned on by all things leadership, and decided at that point that I would explore other HR careers. Coaching kept on coming up, so I determined that I wanted to get a coaching certification. And once I had that certification, I just knew that I wanted to run my own business. Left corporate with a couple of bucks in savings, and went for it. And I actually launched my business right at the point when the market dropped, some whatever that is, 15 years ago. So that was about pivoting and figuring out who needed coaching, which ended up being a lot of financial services people. Their identity was so tied to working in financial services. A lot of them were having kind of existential crises, as well as financial insecurity. And then started coaching from there in my own business. A lot of people in financial services and marketing, communications, become kind of industry agnostic, coaching individuals and teams. Wrote 2 books during that time. One is about the power of connection and how to leverage your network to have greater impact. And the other was on having difficult conversations in the workplace. And that was called Difficult Talks, which targets people pleasers who have trouble giving people honest feedback because they want to be liked. And that kind of gets us to here. These days, I coach executives who want to have greater impact, public speakers who want to leverage their stories for deeper connection, and doing more DEI work right now, leveraging, I guess you would say, my white privilege to create access for other members of the LGBTQIA community, for all sorts, for trans individuals who haven't had the benefits of being a white gay man in his 60s. So this is a very fertile time for me in terms of business and growth. I'm 61 years old, and not slowing down, just creating and building.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And I restrained my urge to jump in and go, that's when you met me. But we could talk about that later.
That's where the story starts, Robert. That's where the story starts.
So let's talk about some challenges, because we talk about that on the show, and how, we don't shy away from challenges because they can help us grow. What challenges did you encounter along the way, and how did they shape the person that you are today?
So professional challenges. I got to go back. Got to go back a ways. I will. I will say, what for me, one of the challenges was, and would probably still be today, being promoted up more quickly and sometimes above my peers, and then having those people reporting to me. It became really a great lesson in figuring out what your own strength is as a leader, and using that to build other people's confidence, to share your network, to really help build their confidence as leaders, and without really getting into the really being a support to them, so they see your value in the relationship, and not just trying to touch everything just because you're suddenly the boss. In some ways, like leaning in harder to lead and coach those people who were at the same level, in a way that's not threatening. That would be one thing. And I think also authenticity. I think that there were times in my evolution. I actually remember once basically begging for my job because I knew that I was about possibly to lose it. And I remember going into the boss's office, and she was president of ABC at the time. And I started crying. I actually started crying, and I could see she just literally shut down at that moment. I think this was a time way back where women believed that emotions didn't have a place in the workplace, and so if you were a man who suddenly broke down like that, you could see how that might have just affected her everything. And I realized that there are ways and places to use emotion that can also keep you safe. And so that was a good lesson to learn. Like, a little bit of me goes a long way, and sometimes the oversharing in a desire to connect is just too much for some people to handle. So learning how to calibrate to not overwhelm.
Alan, it's interesting you share that story. And, I do a training with women leaders, and that seems to be one of the challenges that they have, being branded emotional, right? And that some of them have cried, and that it has created problems for them. Tying this back to this thought about empathy and emotional intelligence, how can one show up, right, being vulnerable and at the same time managing those emotions in situations where being emotional is just a natural part of how any human being would respond in that situation.
Right. And I think sometimes when we're talking about people being emotional, obviously that they're talking about emotions in a blanket way. It's really about identifying what you're feeling, increasing your range of labels for feelings, right? It's not angry, sad, right? That's, men, angry, worried, angry. Right. So just beginning to expand that in ourselves. So, well, what am I feeling right now? Like, actually, I'm feeling shame right now, because it's whatever that is. I'm not feeling shame right now. Actually, I do feel good. So just, it starts with you as first. In order to extend empathy, you need to increase your own range of emotional awareness in order to be able to see and recognize and relate to the emotions of others, and then modeling those emotions in a way that isn't overwhelming. Like, it's one thing to say, I'm really feeling anger right now about what's going on. I had expectations that aren't being met, and frankly, I'm ticked off at all of you, which is different from yelling, raising your voice, throwing the computer at the wall. I worked at a PR firm once where somebody actually punched the wall. So it's like, you gotta work on yourself, man. Like if you can't manage those emotions, you're going to just derail.
Yeah.
But being able to I have clients who will share their concerns or their fears with their employees, and they find that it creates a really great opening for others to be more vulnerable, and it builds trust. But it just can't be done in such a way that it becomes all about you and your emotions. But how can I share or be more emotionally true in this situation in a way that is serving the relationship, the outcome, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I get that. And then do you find then that it's more important to be able, I would imagine, be able to articulate what you're feeling, right? Have some awareness of what you're feeling and articulating it rather than necessarily displaying the emotion in
Right.
terms of your interactions with other people.
Right. And I think talk about peeling back the onion. For most of us, we can access what we're feeling at that top layer of the onion. Like, I'm angry right now because you were late. But if we spend a little bit more time peeling back the layers under that, maybe it's not anger at all, maybe it's disappointment, maybe it's there's some work that I need to do before I can really come to the situation, because I want to know what really is happening. Is it frustration because you've let me down several times, or what's occurring for me?
Yeah.
And what's the emotion, and how do I express that?
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Alan. You know, what's really interesting is, when you talked about crying in front of your boss, who was a woman, and her reaction to you. One of the things that I've seen is that this whole concept of emotion at work has changed so much since even I started working.
Yeah.
Where people came in, they were basically robots, and for men, the only thing that they could, like you said, display was anger or disappointment or worry. For women, it was like nothing, because once they displayed anything, it became, or you're emotional.
Right.
And it's really interesting how women get dinged for displaying the same thing that men do, and it still happens today.
Yeah. And I think, sometimes really leaning into more of that, the emotion, or can bring some drama to the situation, and maybe that's what's needed now and then, right? The pounding on the table, the big voice, like maybe that you need to do that sometimes to shake things up. But a conscious leader knows exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it, rather than it just being acting off of that reaction, right? And I do this with all my public speakers too, and people that I'm training. It's like, what do you want the audience to feel or believe or see right now? And what are the tactics that you need to use in order? Maybe you do need to shout at this point in your speech to wake people up. Maybe you need to sound angry. Maybe you need to clap a few times to get people to pay attention. What is the intention of everything that you say and do? How do you be more conscious about that and use the right tools at the right moment?
Fantastic. And as you know, we're about leadership here. You've mentioned leadership a bunch. So I'm going to just ask you this question: what's your leadership philosophy?
So, and you'll relate to this, Robert. I think it was a tenet of our coach training, is that really everyone is a leader, and it's or has the potential to lead, and it's not position specific. So that social media manager who is sharing some a bold or courageous kind of sentiment in a room full of more senior people is leading just in the same way as that more senior person who is sitting at the table with his or with their arms across their chest, right? So leading energy, I really like that definition, that it's really about the energy that's being used in a situation to engage, inspire, to connect with people. I think there's such a failing of leadership right now in the world. It's kind of heartbreaking, but by the same token, I think it gives a great big opening for heart-centered leaders to really step into to leadership and lead in a way that's more coming from a place of heart, and not something more toxic. So I think I'm pretty politically active, and I just feel like it's there's just so much money in politics right now that people just have forgotten how to lead by bringing their people along to what's truly right, not just what's going to make that politician wealthier.
Yeah.
You really wish sometimes that like our elected officials, that they'd lead, that they would just lead, even stating something that would be unpopular, but taking that chance. They'll have those conversations, the honest and true leadership conversations in the other room, but then the minute they're out in front of everybody, they act like people that are beholden to big pharma,
Yeah.
I think it goes back to your point about being intentional, right? And what are you intending? What are you doing? What are you pursuing? And if what you're in pursuit of is, and I'm going to use power, right, in quotes, in pursuit of power in its not most influential definition of power, right? If your intention is to amass power, then you're not interested in this other aspect that you're talking about, and that we talk about here on the show often, is more about influence, right? And being authentic and presenting who you are and what you're about, and being willing to take the chance that you don't amass the power, but that you get something else instead.
And you have that's true leadership to be willing to risk it all in terms of your own power and salary to do what truly is right. And if not that there's one right way, but to really to lead, damn it.
It's very interesting.
And we have the answers if you would just listen to us, right?
So Alan, when are you running for office?
It's funny that you should say that. I'm using your podcast to announce my run for Congress, but I don't have the stomach for it. Honestly, I just don't have the stomach for it. It's certainly needed down here where I live, which is Miami-Dade. It would be, there's a need, but not ready yet.
Okay.
Ask me again in a few years.
I will. And which is funny, because one of the things that Whitney and we always kind of shirk away from politics because we know it can be such a hot button issue.
Right.
But, I'll allow you to do anything you want, Alan. So go ahead.
No, I would just say that empathy and having those conversations with people who have very different views, that's probably the most important emotional intelligence competency to develop if you really want to go out there in this world and try to understand other people's perspective. And it can be really hard, but I've been working on that a lot over the past few years, especially as a New York liberal moving to a pretty conservative, not the most conservative part of Florida, but definitely a lot of differing perspectives. And I've been practicing having those empathetic conversations and relating to people in terms of their own fear and their own, it's all fear, fear of losing something that you have, or fear of not getting something that you want. And so just listening for places where there can be some give and take and understanding. It's put on the lab coat and just go down there and see what people are thinking.
Fantastic.
Easier said than done.
But you know what? You have the awareness and you're practicing it, which really leads me to my next question. So what strengths do you believe today's leaders need to leverage to navigate all the stuff that's going on?
So great question. I think there were three things that I thought were important, not in any priority order, but I think leaders need to leverage their social capital, their networks, both for their own personal growth and development, but also for those whom they lead. The way that you can really build relationships, and that this is whether you run a small business or you run a team or lead a company, is developing relationships and connection, which is fundamentally what emotional intelligence is about. It's about connection and relationships. So when I go out to a networking event, I'm looking to meet people who I can introduce my clients to, or just people in my network. Today, I'm looking for a real estate attorney, not for myself, but because I'm constantly being asked for that. And so I want to utilize my network on behalf of, in service of relationships that I wish to build. So I love being that person who knows that person that can get you to that person. And I share that very freely, and it always comes back to me. So sharing your experience, your knowledge, your wisdom, leveraging that, and is probably the number two. And the third thing is your story. We create connection and relationships through storytelling. And I can't tell you the number of very, very senior level executives I coach who are uncomfortable sharing their origin story, their back with people, because they feel like it's too personal. And I agree that sometimes the details may be, but that's something we want to develop, our ability to storytell, to leverage our experiences into stories that will help people see themselves in that story to create connection and relationship. So that's and then helping those that report to us leverage their own strengths in service of the organization's goal. I think that the more we really understand what people's strengths are, even if it doesn't fall tidily into their job description, it still can do a lot for organizational culture and building relationships. It's like, Robert's great at X, you should go talk to him. It's like, that's something that so knowing what people are really good at, so you can build those relationships for mentorship, et cetera, is key. I said three. I think the fourth is probably empathy, but we spent a lot of time on that already. But most of us have just been hammered to death over the past few years, emotionally fried. Our systems are just taxed. So the empathetic leader is the person who is going to create really good rapport, good retention, and a reputation that this is a person who you can work for, who generally cares about you, and still will make sure that the job gets done, but do it in a way that honors and respects you as a person.
Fantastic.
Before you go on, Robert, I just want to tap in a little bit on the networking piece, because I feel like that's one of the areas that doesn't get a lot of attention. And I love the approach that you have. When I'm working with clients, they don't like networking, right? Networking. And your approach, that it is not about you, right? But making connections with people in order to connect other people, right? Can take sort of the piece out of networking that I think a lot of people feel is unseemly, maybe. And use it to focus on connecting other people and helping other people to grow, to learn, to get what they want and need, which is what we believe leaders should be doing, right? That it is your role as a leader, whether by title or not, to uplift other people, to empower other people, to help them to learn, to grow, to get where they're going. And if you reframe the networking,
Right.
To make it about the benefit of other people, it could take just that piece out of it that makes it uncomfortable for most people, right?
Well,
to actually go and do that.
I also encourage my clients who I work with in this area to reframe the whole networking experience as connection, connect working. That was my clever little word there.
I like it.
that it is really about farming and not hunting. So you're looking to meet people who are great referral partners you can send business back and forth to, who it's just really about building an ecosystem that you're watering and nurturing over time. And I'll be honest, I used to be one of with all ego aside, I used to be one of the best networkers in Manhattan. I ran a BNI chapter, which was Business Networking Incorporated. It was I was really thought of as that person who knew everyone. You go to Alan and you can meet. I wrote a book on it, but over the past few years, my social anxiety has really kicked in. I forgot some of the basic tools that I'm remembering now, which is it's all about a nurture strategy, because 2 years later, I feel sometimes like I'm having to start from scratch with people because I fell out of touch. I stopped learning what they were up to, what's a meaningful referral for them. And if you stop going out there and learning what's out there and to maintain relevance, and you stop doing any kind of that networking, you do become irrelevant. So it's never too late to lean into developing those relationships that can lay those golden eggs, right? It's not about it's meeting those golden geese, nurturing those relationships so they're constantly giving you those little eggs. I don't know where I was going with that, but
no.
I like it. No, I got it.
And a harp and.
No, we love all the fables and fairy tales. We make those connections all the time. So this is great, and I wanted to ask you something, Alan, because finally I get to talk about how I met you. So Alan was my trainer when I went to coach training, and so I knew Alan in that capacity. But you've done so many different things. You've wrote a couple of books. You did a TEDx talk. What are you doing now?
Working smarter, not harder, I guess you would say. I generally only work with people who really float my boat, who I'm inspired by. If it's not inspiring, if it's not enjoyable, I don't do it. I did that earlier in my career, so I work with super talented leaders and solopreneurs and small business owners and who want to grow their businesses and themselves and increase their emotional intelligence. That's fantastic. And I paint and when I'm not working and I love it, and just beginning to sell art and that's super cool. And one of these days I'm going to figure out how to connect my artist self with my coach self with my emotional intelligence expertise in a workshop or a class, and just haven't figured that out yet, but it's coming. It is coming.
Excellent. And I follow you on Instagram, so I see when you put your art up, I'm always checking it out. So I've watched your evolution.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely.
You are the one. You're the one that I can.
But yeah, I like that.
That's my man. But now when I don't get a like from you, I'm nervous.
Well, it's interesting because I was just watching a documentary about that and how social media has changed, particularly the younger generation, how, you can put something out there and get a whole bunch of likes, and the minute that you don't, you're like, I'm terrible, right?
Right. I'm an imposter.
Yeah.
Whatever. Right.
Yeah, and it means nothing, right? You were the same person
Right.
before, and you're the same person after. But for some reason, whether or not someone happens to be online and clicking, like that,
Right.
means something to you. It's really
See, you can solve that by not getting any likes at all. How about that?
Yeah. It's very interesting.
Right.
So, I'm pretty much. I have one more question for you, Alan, and I like to ask this question because the people we have on our show are very seasoned leaders and have worked with a lot of different people. So, what advice? I know coaches don't usually give advice, but what advice would you give a leader, whether they're a new leader or a long-standing leader? What advice would you give them?
I would say I'm like a one-trick pony here about connection, but I will say that none of us got here alone, and none of us can get to our next level alone. So whether you hire a coach or find a mentor or join some kind of a professional group like a Vistage or an entrepreneur's organization, I think it's super valuable. I think it's hard when you're at the top to know where to go and for advice or suggestions. Often you might feel like you're just supposed to know that already. And I think it's just really useful to have outside support to lift you up when you're down, to help see those blind spots, just a shoulder to lean on. And there's no embarrassment to that. I mean, most of us, if we didn't have that early in our careers, we probably had to work a little too hard to get where we are. So being relying on other people is a good thing for a leader, any leader.
That's great advice. Whitney, take us home.
Well, as usual, the time just flies by. And so we want to thank you, Alan, one, for being here, but we want to give you an opportunity to get in touch with the audience. If there's someone that would love to work with you or learn more about you or see your art, you didn't put that in your bio, I don't think. So I'm going to have to go check you out.
I'm hiding my light under that bushel.
What kind of art are you into? What do you
mainly
create?
acrylic and marker and multimedia. So it was something I started at Susan Wagner High School when I was 17 years old. All right, Robert, you will remember. And then and nurtured it, especially during COVID the past few years, bringing it back. But if people want to get in touch with me, AlanSamuelCohen.com is the place. That's my website, and you can request a free discovery call, talk about whatever's on your mind. And then on Instagram is where I post most of my art. That's Alan Samuel Cohen, and LinkedIn, all those, very consistent. It's Alan Samuel Cohen everywhere.
Smart.
24/7.
It's smart. It's smart branding to be consistent across everything. So awesome.
That's what they told me.
Awesome. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining us. Robert, before we go, sometimes people want to get in touch with you. They want to work with you. Help me help you.
You can reach me inspire me at roberthilliardcoaching.com, or you can go over to my website, which is roberthilliardcoaching.com, and reach out to me. Like Alan said, I also do discovery calls, and I learned that from him.
Smart. So there you go. You've got two executive coaches, Alan, Robert, that you can get in touch with. If you are looking to make some changes in your career, you can reach out to me. If you'd like to get a copy of my ebook, Love Your Work, you can get it at shiftingintooaction.now.site. It's there. It's my gift to you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being a part of our family. And if there's a topic that we could cover for you, let us know. Drop us a line. Let us know what you'd like for us to cover. Next week, we will be talking about what's in the news, right? On the second Thursday of the month, we talk about what is in the news. We'll be looking for conversations about leveraging, or stories about leveraging, and what leaders are doing to leverage the things that we talked about today, their empathy, emotional intelligence, and other areas that they may be leveraging that you can learn from. So we want to, again, thank you for being here. Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. And until next time, take care.
Bye now.